Last week's Torah portion. Anybody remember what that was about?
Like the unclean and clean. Like you couldn't touch things. If you touched a dead animal, no matter if it was a kosher animal or not, you were still unclean for a certain amount of time. I just remember we beat that over the head.
If you were touching an animal?
Dead animal.
A dead one, a carcass. Right? A carcass. Right? So it's typically an animal that still has its blood in it, but that has passed away. All right. So last Torah portion, we discovered that we got to go into the actual tabernacle, right? Aaron and his sons, they were in there for 7 days. Aaron and his sons were in there for 7 days. And then, on the 8th day, what happened? It said the Lord appeared, remember? God appeared in his glory. And when his glory came down, what happened? So the glory of the Lord came down. The people, they started shouting. They fell on their faces. And then there was 2 sons of Aaron that did something. What did they do?
Was it Nadab and Abihu?
Nadab and Abihu, yeah. Okay, and I don't think I covered this last week, but I want to connect the dots today before we get into our study today. Do you guys see the connection with Nadab and Abihu, what they did? Because not only did they offer strange fire, did they offer the incense when it wasn't recommended or required or asked to, but who, in the instructions that God gave Moses, who was supposed to be the one that brought the incense to the Father?
The high priest.
The high priest. And who's the high priest?
Aharon.
You're right. And they were doing something beyond their duties. They were usurping the authority of their father. They were doing what was right in their own eyes. And then right after that happened and God came down and, consumed them in fire, what was the very first thing that the Lord told Aaron and Moses? What was the very first thing that he started instructing them on concerning this matter, right after this happened? He tells them the very first instruction was, whenever you come into my place, into my living room, make sure that you are not drunk. Make sure you don't have any strong drink when you come in here. And whatever Nadab and Abihu, when they did this, you notice that Aaron, it said that he kept his mouth shut when this happened. It's almost like he knew what they did was wrong. Now, let's connect the dots. The very beginning of your Bible starts with Adam and Eve, right? Trying to seize their own autonomy. Trying to eat from this tree of good and bad so they can define what's right and wrong in their own eyes. Basically, taking the authority, that God had over us, and saying that God's ways weren't right, but we're going to listen to this creature in that garden, and we're going to seize our own rules the way this creature has in his rebellion against God. Okay? And so they end up, right, kicked out of God's presence for this. Fast forward, whoop, God brings the flood over the earth with Noah. Noah gets off the boat. Noah does what? Plants a vineyard. Noah,
Makes some wine.
what did Noah do?
Got drunk.
He got drunk. The first instruction from these 2 brothers is, or actually to Moses and Aaron, at the death of these 2 sons in God's living room, 2 dead bodies in God's place, is whenever you come in here, don't get drunk. So Noah, boom, God saves him, spares him, plants a vineyard, he gets drunk. And what happens while he's drunk in his tent?
He's exposed, and one of his sons finds him.
And he's exposed, one of his sons finds him, and what does that son do?
I guess he makes fun of him.
Huh?
He makes fun
Uncovers his nakedness.
Uncovers his nakedness? makes fun of him.
The other one covers him, right?
Right.
Walks backwards and covers him. Right?
Didn't the other two took a blanket and backed
backwards? Yeah. So Noah gets drunk, and in his own tent, in his own living room, one of his sons mocks his father. Right? And basically mocking the authority that his father has over him. And he goes to make fun of his father and tells everybody else, come and see him. Look at him. Well, the other brothers, they walk backwards. Right? And so that brother who made fun of his father in his nakedness gets cursed. His name is what? His name was Ham, but actually, so his son got cursed, which is Canaan. Right? Same stuff here. These two guys, in God's living room, in God's tent, they go, just like Adam and Eve in the garden, just like Ham. Now they're repeating that same system as the Garden in Eden, right? This tabernacle, which is this portable Eden. They do it right in God's living room, again. So you guys see the pattern that's happening. And right after that happens, God has to give them these set of rules, which we are still going over today, starting in chapter 12. But this all stemmed from Nadab and Abihu dying. This is a continual conversation from that point of why God is going to continue to talk to us the importance of coming into his space. So everything we're reading is a byproduct of what Nadab and Abihu did. Right? So that's why God is doing it, to let us know the importance of coming into God's living room. Like, you don't go into Kyle's house and disrespect Kyle in his house. Disrespecting him anywhere is bad. But the level goes even higher of disrespect when you do it inside of his house. And so right here, you had the very first service inside the tabernacle, and it went south. Right? It went south. So, you guys ready? So, we're in chapter 12 right now. And we are going to talk about, remember, the first 7 chapters were all about rituals, or offerings. I guess you can say it was offerings. And there was 5 offerings. And out of the 5 offerings, only 3 of them were good. 3 of them were very good. 2 of them were because we messed up our relationships either with each other or with God. And now, chapters 8, 9, and 10 were about the priest, Nadab and Abihu, right? And the ordination of going into that tabernacle and its service and the mess up there. And then 11 was what? Talking about the food, the pure food, right? Yeah, we're going to talk about, so it was the food, and that was the very center of the Torah, is Leviticus 11. The very center, the very heart of Torah is there, right? But he's not done talking yet. He's going to continue this topic of purity, okay? There's going to be 3 words, and I'll write in black. The 3 words is going to be impure, pure, and holy. Okay?
You're going to give us the Hebrew words for those?
The Hebrew words. So, I believe this is what? Tamei?
Tamei, yeah.
Tamei. So, something like that. And then I think this is Tahor. And I think this is Kadosh. Okay? So, those are the words we're going to talk about. God says, this is where we live. We live in a state, right? We live in a state. He wants us to live in a state of purity. And as you're in a state of purity, if you touch anything impure, you will become impure. And if you touch anything holy in his holy place, you become holy. So this is contagious and this is contagious. And he wants you to know the difference, right? Because this is where we're at right now. Okay? But he wants us to become holy. But he wants us to be conscious of this. Remember Psalms 24. Who can ascend into the hill of the Lord? Who can ascend into his holy habitation? Those who have clean hands, pure hearts, and didn't speak anything evil with their lips. The name of our Torah portion is Tazria, which some of your versions may say that it means has conceived. So it's she conceived, right? So she conceived is the name of today's portion. You ready? Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a woman has conceived seed and born a male, she will be impure for 7 days, according to the days of the separation of her infirmity, will she be impure. And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin will be circumcised. And she will then continue in the blood of her purifying for 33 days. She will touch no hallowed thing or come into the tabernacle until the days of her purifying are fulfilled." So stop. What are we talking about? And who's speaking to who here?
Yahweh speaking to Moses.
So Yahweh speaking to Moses, okay? And what is he telling Moses?
About a woman giving birth, conceiving and giving birth.
So a woman is conceiving and she's giving birth to who?
A male.
Child.
A male child. Okay, so she's going to conceive, she's going to give birth to a male child, and then what? What does he tell us?
There's a specific amount of time that the purification happens where she's still impure.
So on the baby's 8th day, the circumcision takes place, but then for another 33 days.
Is it 8
Right.
plus 33, or is it just 33 from? Yeah, I think it's just 33.
So she's going to be impure, right, for 7 days, right? So she's going to have a male, right? I was going to put kid. I'm so into goats right now, right? Huh? Oh, they're talking to me. Okay, so she has a baby boy.
Yeah, so the 33 days are total, or are they in addition to the 8 days?
So let's break it down. So she has the baby boy, and then it first tells us that she's going to be impure for how many days first off?
7 days.
Okay, so she's impure for 7 days. Okay, so again, does being impure mean that you are morally wrong?
No.
Does it mean that you're sinning?
No.
No. That's not what it means. Correct. Okay, this just means don't go into the tabernacle, into God's living room right now.
And don't handle the holy things.
And don't handle the holy things, right? And let other people know that you're in a state of impurity in case they want to go and approach the Lord. That would not be good. So understand, it's not morally wrong. It's not a sin. This is part of life, right? In creation, in the genesis of life happening here. Okay? So, that was number 1. So she's going to have a boy. She's going to be impure for 7 days. According to the days of her separation of her infirmity, will she be impure? What's going to happen on the 8th day?
Circumcision.
On the 8th day, they're going to circumcise the boy, right? So now they're going to circumcise him on the 8th day circumcision. Now, remember this, because this is going to be important when we compare and contrast this to when she has a female and when she has a girl. Okay? When she gives birth to a girl. So, the 8th day, they're going to get him circumcised, and then she will then continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days.
So it is 33 days after the 8.
It sounds like in addition to the 7, because she will then continue for 33 days.
So that's 40 days total.
So,
But I don't know.
then
That's how I read it. Ready?
33 days for purification.
So we could come up with 3 different time frames here.
Okay?
Yep.
What is it?
33 days total, or 33 days plus the 7 days of the original impurity, or after the 8th day of the circumcision,
Okay.
plus 33.
So this is how I see it with a lot of other people. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be. But the way I see it is, for 7 days after she's had the baby, she's impure. But then, on the 8th day, they can bring the baby to get circumcised. And then after that 8th day, then she goes back into a purification process for 33 days. So,
That's the most logical.
that's how I see it. That it's like God covers her somehow for the 8th day to bring her baby, on the 8th day to get circumcised. So 7 days she's impure after she bores a male, and then on the 8th day it's like she can come, get him circumcised, but then she goes and continues in purification for 33 days. John.
What is the name of that? Is it Bris Milah or something?
Brit Milah is like the covenant of circumcision for the 8th day, yeah. So,
You know, and later on when it describes the other things that you gotta, stipulations, there's a health thing to it, you know, to me in my mind.
so there could be a health thing to it. I'm sure that there could be a health thing to it. But remember that the circumcision that was given to Abraham was for a remembrance to Abraham and his family of a promise that God gave to Abraham, that anytime he looked down and he saw himself, he remembers the promise that God gave him, that his family was going to be like the stars of the heavens and the sand of the seashore. And there is nothing and nobody that's going to stop that. Not even the people who want to depopulate the world are not going to stop God's promises to Abraham. So anytime Abraham saw himself naked, it was a reminder that God made him a promise. Because Abraham forgot a lot. God promised him, hey, you know, you're going to populate the earth. You're going to be a father of many nations. And the next day he's telling Pharaoh, this is my sister. And the reason he's doing that is because he thinks Pharaoh's going to kill him. After God just told him he was going to populate the world.
So that Pharaoh can have his 70-year-old or 70-year-old wife.
She was an old woman, but she had it going on because all the Egyptians were like, hey, check this girl out, you know? Yeah, that's why I joke around. If you don't want people to look at your wife, then don't marry a beautiful one, you know, because it's going to happen. So anyway, you have this 8-day circumcision, and it was supposed to remind Abraham and his people forever forward that your children are a blessing. Your children are a miracle. Because God chose a no-name guy from the backwoods, him and his wife, who were barren, couldn't have any children, and he brought a miracle. And through them, we now say Father Abraham had many sons. Right? That's all a miracle. So this was the covenant. And that's what circumcision was birthed from, was that promise. So every time you saw that, it was a symbol to know that your family, your existence, and you here in this faith was that God made a promise to Abraham. And God is not a man, and he doesn't break his promises. He's not like us, and he's faithful to us, even when we're not. And you know that all from what he promised Abraham about how big his family was going to be. So the 8th day circumcision, remember it. And man, does not the Lord give us so much things to help us remember, because we're such a forgetful people. I mean, from zeets to foreskins, yeah, to Aaron's bud that, you know, his stick that budded, almonds, to the manna, you know, there's just so many things that he's going to have them set up as pillars, as memorials, to help you remember, because we forget a lot, right? Just like Moses. I mean not Moses, Abraham. Abraham forgot once, twice, like 3, 4 times God's promise to him. Like where him and Sarah even laugh at God, like, that ain't gonna happen, you know. So my opinion is to have a baby. She's impure for 7 days, but on this 8th day she can come, present him for circumcision. He can get circumcised, and then she goes 33 days into her purification for that male child.
So 40 days total, she's considered impure.
So for 40 days total, she's considered impure, but on this 8th day, she's got to get out of jail free card. I don't know how to explain that, but that's what it appears like. Okay? So, let's keep reading here. And for further study, you can look at Luke 1:59 on that as well. Okay, so because she will touch no hallowed thing or come into the tabernacle until the days of her purifying are fulfilled. Okay, so she's not going to enter until those 33 days of purification. But if she bears a female, she will be impure for 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she will continue in the blood of her purifying for 66 days. So now she's having a baby girl. How many days is she impure for a baby girl? 2 weeks is what?
14 days.
Okay, so she's 14 days impure.
And then there's no temple visit.
No temple visit, right? Or tabernacle visit. And then, what else?
Then 66 days.
And
of
then, yeah.
purification.
Then,
Why does it separate between 2 weeks and then go 66?
66 days.
Why wouldn't you say?
For
Is there a
purification.
difference in the impure and purification?
It's double of what the male's like.
Yeah. But is that the same process, or is there something else going on in the 66 days versus the 14 days?
80 days.
So this is a total of 40. Okay, and this one is a total of how many?
80.
80.
I'm just not understanding why is it separated. 2 weeks you're like this, you're impure, and then you continue to be impure for 66 days.
So you're
Oh, I see what she said.
so what's happening is you're impure for 7 days and you're impure for 14 days. And now after those days you start a purification process where you start cleansing. So so understand impure, or some of your versions has unclean or whatever. This does not have anything to do with sin or morality.
Right.
Okay? What happened is if there's blood and fluids coming out, it's like you're a body full of life and you're leaking life out. Life is being let out of you. Okay? So it's no longer in you. It's like oozing out of you. And so if there's a loss of life, I guess can be the picture, what makes you impure. Okay? Because we live in this mortal body that longs to put on immortality one day. And until that immortality comes upon us, we leak life out of us. This is ceremonial. Remember, because God has given us this recipe of instructions right after Nadab and Abihu went and corrupted his living room. Right? Because he didn't let Moses or anyone into his house prior to some instructions of how to get in there. And finally, when he allowed us to go in there, after all this covering, or what your Bible says atonement, that we did in order for them to go in there, they went in there, and Nadab and Abihu, the first service, they messed up. They usurped their dad's authority and only do what the high priest is supposed to do. They offer their incense, and God's like, no, they're not following my rules in my house. This is what happened to Noah's son Ham. This is what happened to Adam and Eve in the garden. They didn't listen to my instructions in my house. And because of that, there are consequences. Right? And so after Nadab and Abihu, he starts giving us these instructions. And so what he's telling us is, with this purification, is that no, having a baby is not a sin. This is beautiful. But because there's a loss of life in there, you can't come into God's place yet. Enjoy your baby, right, for 40 days or for 80 days. And so what's the difference between having a son and a female? Or a male and a female? Why is he 40 days and having a girl is 80 days before you can enter?
Beats me.
So I can give you an opinion. Okay, is this 8th day circumcision. After this boy gets the foreskin cut off, that's the only day he's gonna bleed. That he should bleed. Unless there's like a complication that went on or something. His time of bleeding happened on his 8th day of life. And he's not gonna bleed from there again. Unless he's like sick or something. I hope that never happens. But typically, that 8th day, that's when he's cut up, right? And that's his day of bleeding. But a woman, both of them, her and the baby, are going to continue to leak life out of them for the rest of their life until they hit a certain age, maybe. They're going to continue to have that blood life leak out of them in that sense. Does that make any sense to you? And I believe that's kind of what that is a picture of, is that his bleeding is done. But both of these women are not. They're going to bleed to purify themselves.
That's pretty interesting, yeah.
You know, and to kind of touch on what you were talking about, how you were saying later on in the Torah, it's going to tell us that when a woman is on her time of the month, don't touch her or else you're going to be impure to go into the tabernacle. So don't sleep with your wife when she's on her time of the month. And Paul goes even further on that. And Paul says, hey guys, I know if you and your wife, you know, he talks to, writing to Corinth, he says, if you're just a man that just is so passionate to be in the bedroom with your wife, and she's on that time of the month, he says, I would take that time to go and pray and fast. Well, make that your ritual praying and fasting of the month. Make that what you do. And to me, that makes a lot of sense as a health coach, because whenever you crash diet or you fast and don't eat, you guess what? Your testosterone goes down, your hormones go, your libido goes down, you know, and you don't have that drive no more. Ask anybody who like just reduces their calories, you're just not gonna have that same I'm a man feeling anymore. And so to me, it's like Paul's being pretty cool there, because not only is it neat in the spiritual sense, but also in a physical sense, it makes a lot of sense to help you not want to desire, you know, to have, you know, romance while your wife is off limits, and helps you just focus on the Lord, helps your libido, everything drop, so you're not desiring someone else or something of that sort. But just makes so cool sense there. But just kind of touch on what you were talking about. So 40 days, 80 days. Is this okay with you guys? Is this sitting okay with you? All right, so when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she will bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering to the door of the tent of meeting to the priest. And he will offer it before Yahweh and make a covering for her, and she will be cleansed from the issue of her blood. Okay? So, after her purification, when it's all done, whether it's a son or a girl, what is she bringing?
An offering.
Right? She's bringing a lamb, a pigeon or a turtle dove, right?
Well, the lamb is for a burnt offering,
Okay, lamb for a burnt offering.
and the pigeon or turtle dove is for a sin offering.
Okay, so the burnt offering that she wants to come up because she hasn't been able to come up to his presence, the tabernacle. So now she'll be able to, and she's bringing her come up and draw near offering, right? You raising your hand, Hannah?
Does it say what happens if she has twins?
Does it say what happens if she has twins? You
Later
know,
on it does, I think, doesn't it?
you said it does later
I
on?
think, maybe. I swear I've read that before.
I'm pretty sure it'd be the same time frame. I don't think.
Like
I
a
don't,
boy and a girl?
would they have a boy and a
It's
girl?
complicated, right? No, if it's a boy or a girl, then we have the variation between that.
I'm pretty sure that topic is covered somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't know
you
if it's in
find
the
stuff
Bible,
though,
if it's
right?
just like on
Longest.
other commentary talk. But I'm not going to answer now because I don't know off the top of my head. But I'm pretty sure that there's an answer for that, or an opinion or a response to it somewhere. So the lamb for a burnt offering, and what else?
The sin offering, pigeon or turtle dove.
A pigeon or turtle dove. Now, does it mean that she sinned just because she's bringing this offering?
Nope.
No, right? No. Just because she's bringing a sin offering doesn't mean she sinned. Right? Doesn't mean. And it's only a dove, right? A dove or a pigeon. Right? This is just the offerings that she's going to bring for her cleansing so she can approach. Okay? And that's whether she has a male or a female. Is that cool? And now she's free to come up into the tabernacle. Does this mean that she can't pray at her house and she's lost all communication with God in her life? No, not at all, right? Not at all. Because remember, even when, or let's see. Yeah, like when Yeshua, when he was a baby, messengers were still coming to talk to his parents. You guys remember that? Yeah, so just because that you're going to have a baby or you're going to be impure doesn't mean that God's not going to talk to you or you can't talk to God. Doesn't that mean? It just means you can't go into his house, into his holy throne room, right? You can't go mess up his living room. You can't go put your dirty shoes on his living room floor. That's why he tells Moses, when Moses saw him at the burning bush, he says, hey, take your shoes off because this is holy ground. There's something special about walking into God's throne room that's different anywhere else you may experience God. If you experience him at the tabernacle or the tent like Abraham did when he was like hanging out in his tent door in the heat of the day and he saw those three men talk to God and like he was just a pal, right? Ate meal with him and everything. Moses got to go up on that mountain and got to see God on the mountain. God actually put him in the cleft of a rock and covered it with his hand and let Moses see his glory and all that. But there is something different now when it's actually in the tabernacle, right? Or this tent, a meeting. There's a different level of his glory there to where you have to be in the state compared to anywhere else you experienced him. So it doesn't mean that you're cut off from God. So get that out of your mind if it's ever in there. All right? Let's keep reading. John? Oh, yeah. Verse 7. So this is the instruction for her who has borne a male or a female. And if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she could bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, the one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. And the priest will make a covering for her, and she will be pure. Okay? So, if she can't afford a lamb, what can she bring?
Turtle.
2
A
young
turtle?
pigeons.
Yeah, 2 pigeons or 2 turtle doves. So, again, just like the first 7 chapters of Leviticus, God doesn't care about the monetary, right, cost of what you bring if you can't afford it. He's not concerned about that. If you can't afford it, if you can't afford an ox, bring a goat. If you can't afford a goat, bring some birds. If you can't bring these birds, bring some flour or some bread. If you can't afford to make the bread, then bring some flour. Right? Same thing here. If you can't afford the lamb, bring some doves or some pigeons. Brother John?
Did you read the last part of verse 7?
I thought I did.
Unless it's worded different than mine.
So
Just the last sentence of verse 7.
So
Just to compare to mine.
okay, so I'll start at the whole verse 7. It says, he will offer it before Yahweh and make a covering for her, and she will be cleansed or pure from the issue of her blood. This is the instruction for her who has borne a male or a female.
Well, so mine says this is the Torah for her who has given birth to a male. Yeah, that's why I was a little confused whether you read that.
Okay.
I didn't follow it there, but yeah. Instruction, it says there
Yeah.
in Torah.
Yeah,
Which
so-
is what Torah is, right?
Yeah.
Instruction.
Yeah. And remember, this is all coming after Nadab and Abihu. God is just giving them further instructions so when they walk into his presence, they don't end up dead on his living room floor. That's what this is for. This added stuff is like, okay. So, because Nadab and Abihu messed up just like Adam and Eve, messed up just like Ham, let me help you and give you further instructions when you come to my house. When you walk into my house, because you are so accustomed of being common, right? You live in the common world. But when you walk into my house, I'm not like the world. I'm different. I'm set apart, which you know as the word holy. I'm a little bit different. So when you come in here, you have to be like me. You have to come into this place like me. You have to walk back into my image and my likeness. Doesn't mean that being out there in the common world is bad. It just means when you come here, you understand my standards are a little bit higher than what's commonly known where you're at. Right? Okay. Oh, so we're in chapter 13. Look at that. Let's go. So Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man will have the skin of his flesh arising, a scab or a bright spot, it is the plague of leprosy in the skin of his flesh. Then he will be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. And we'll stop. We will stop. Okay.
How many sons are left?
Huh?
How many sons are left?
Aaron has 2 sons left. Right?
Just checking.
Okay, so what is going on here?
He's giving us instructions. If someone comes to them with leprosy.
Leprosy. Now, what is this leprosy?
Swelling of scab.
Okay.
A swelling, a scab, or a bright spot. And it shall become on the skin of his body like a leprous infection.
He's good.
So all your Bibles say leprous infection. Okay, so you guys know what leprosy is today? Hansen's disease?
Hansen's disease?
Okay, that's what leprosy is today.
Isn't that incurable?
That is incurable. Okay? That is not what this is talking about.
Oh, okay.
Your English versions do not help you out here. They call it leprosy. And maybe that's what the original name was. But whatever we named ours today for leprosy, it's not the same thing. Okay? It is not the same thing. That word is zadarat. If I pronounced that right. Okay? And this is all about this thing. It's a mark on your body.
What do you mean?
Like scab or a bright spot. It would be swelling, a bump, and bright, right?
Mm-hmm. So,
Swelling.
do not get this confused with about being sick. The reason I say this is go back to the first pages of your Bible. There was a man who sinned who killed his brother.
I just got this too.
In Cain.
Cain. He put some mark and.
God marked Cain to let the world know, don't mess with Cain. Don't think you have to take vengeance on him. I've already dealt with him. And on Cain, right, I put a mark. So on Cain, I put a mark. And here in this chapter, someone has that same mark. This, as we read this, I want you to read it as in the context that someone is doing something in secret, not confessing their sin, and God is marking them for us to see and know about it. This is not an infectious disease. If it was, the priest wouldn't go out to be seeing him.
Yeah, he'd get the disease too.
And also, one would...
What about this 10, which was healed
Who?
by Jesus? You remember?
That's a different leprosy.
Okay.
That's the Hansen's disease, probably.
Maybe. I'm pretty sure within time, stuff has changed. But this one here, as we read what's going to go on with this type of a mark or illness, it's not anything that we're common. That it can spread through someone's body, but yet I can go and be all in your presence inspecting you, and I not get it. It's not infectious. As a matter of fact, it says that it's going to be in some of your clothes and boots. When was the last time any of you guys had a jacket or a boot that had an infection?
Never.
Never. Okay.
Or what about athlete's foot? If you have athlete's foot and I put on your shoes, will I get athlete's foot?
Well, I'm sure you probably would.
Right, but this,
You
yeah.
got this
So,
at gym
that's the-
floor, you know what I mean? Or
So-
a changing locker room.
so just keep that in mind. That this is, in my opinion, this is all a spiritual sickness. That this is a spiritual illness. Okay, this is my opinion, that this is something spiritual. This is something that God is doing himself. And this is not something like the flu or,
Is any definition or explanation how this mark looks like?
we're about to read it
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah, you ready? So it says, verse 2, when a man will have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or a bright spot, it is the plague of Zararat in the skin of the flesh. Then he will be brought to Aaron, the priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. Okay, so if someone has a spot on them, what are they supposed to do?
Go to the priest.
So you're supposed to go, right? You're supposed to go to the priest. So the priests are also apparently your physicians here.
Family doctor.
You're your family doctor. They're going to inspect your body. Okay, so these guys were musicians, doorkeepers, what else? Help me out. Butchers, Torah teachers,
MD.
judges, right? So there's a big operation going on here in the temple.
They had
Okay,
a full schedule.
huh?
They had a full schedule.
They had a very full schedule. You're correct, Hannah.
Had a lot of appointments.
Okay, so you're gonna go to the priest, right? And they're gonna inspect your skin for you. Okay, so verse 3, the priest will look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and wherein the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague in sight is deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is the plague of leprosy. And the priest will look on him and will pronounce him what?
Zaraat.
Yeah, so he will be Zaraat. This guy here is going to be impure. Impure. Does that mean?
Impure and unclean. Is the same?
So yeah, so yours is going to say unclean, but the real word is tameh, which in Hebrew means to be impure. And that's purity, impure, pure, in the context of your state of sanctity to go into the tabernacle. Okay? So if you got this mark on you, you cannot enter the tabernacle because you are impure. If the bright spot is white in the skin of his flesh, and in the sight is not deeper than the skin of the hair of it is not turned white, then the priest will shut him up that has the plague for how long?
7 days.
So 7 days. So 7 days.
So he's quarantined for 7 days.
7 days he's quarantined. 7 days. You guys remember what's supposed to trigger in your mind anytime you hear 7 days?
Creation.
Creation. God's trying to make you think of the first days of creation, where he created all things and all things were good, and he rested on the seventh day and he called it holy. And he was with man in the Garden of Eden. He wants to trigger your brain to that. So for 7 days, you're going to have this retrospect of yourself. What are you doing? So it's like you got 7 days to think about, what are you doing in your life that's causing this crazy illness or skin disease to happen upon you, right? That's it. How many of you guys like being sick? Anyone like being sick? No. how much more do you like having some type of skin issue that everyone can see? You're right. It's uncomfortable to have a cough or something like that, you know, and no one can see that. They can hear it sometimes. But how much more if you just got like big old, you know, ooze, you know, this big old fleshy thing on you, or
like there's this guy at work. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about. He's got something on his I don't know what it is, but I don't know. It kind of reminds me of that.
okay.
It's very noticeable, you know, and you see that.
I saw it yesterday for the first time. Yeah, I saw it
And
yesterday.
it's very noticeable. And you're like, what? Like, I feel bad. Like that must be.
Yeah.
Is it painful? Is it like, what is that?
Or an acquaintance of mine many, many years ago, he had acne real bad, and he's looking in the mirror, and my brother-in-law Neil always made fun of him, but he had acne real bad, and this guy's looking in the mirror, and he thought he was God's gift to women. But then he's like, why did God curse me with this? Why couldn't he have given me a heart disease or something people couldn't see? Like he was just worried about what they're gonna see.
Oh man.
So that keep that in mind, because some of this is intuitive. Some of this you have to sit and meditate on this. Like, okay, what is it like to have this mark on me?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of mark did Cain have on him that everyone could see it? Did it make him self-conscious? What are you gonna say?
I was just thinking about some other religion.
But didn't Cain say, everyone that sees me will know?
Everyone
And
that
they're gonna
sees
try to kill
me.
me.
Yeah. So in my mind, I want to correlate Cain with what's going on here. I really do. Right? So, anyway, let's keep reading. Verse 4? 5? Thank you. And the priest will look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight is at stay, and the plague has not spread in the skin, then the priest will shut him up for 7 days more. Okay, so if nothing has happened in 7 days, right? Nothing has happened, then he's going to do what?
He's gonna shut him up 7 days more.
7 more days. 7 more days.
So now we're at 14 days of quarantine.
14 days of quarantine for whatever's going on in this guy's body. Okay? And the priest will look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague is somewhat dark, the plague is not spread in the skin, the priest will pronounce him pure. Okay, so now this thing is going from that white to a dark. Okay, it's now going dark, and it hasn't spread. He is now going to be pure. He's going to be tahor. He's going to be pure. Interesting. What happened in those 7 days that changed this man? Like, what's going on? My opinion is these 7 days are letting him have a time of retrospect or a time of repentance. That's my opinion. Because nothing's done. He's not getting medicine. They're not giving him medicine. They're not giving him ointments. They're not giving him dates, or figs to plaster on him the way Hezekiah did with Isaiah and them. He's just in there for 7 days. And for most of you guys, if you got this random crazy skin issue happening to you, and you have to be shut, in quarantine for 7 days, no one's around you, right? It appears like no one is. What's going on in your mind? How many of you guys are going to question, like, what did I do? God, what is going on? And maybe this is some time of retrospect where you get to sit there and just examine your life. You guys ever done that before? Have a time just to examine your life, who you are, what you've become? Is it good? Is it bad? Do I need to change course? I'm under the impression that this is kind of what this is going for. Something's happening within the 7 days. There's no medicine given. There's no treatment given. There's no treatment plan, right? There's no prescription. And something is transpiring in this 7 days that is causing this to get better. or we're going to read maybe not get better. We'll see. What verse, John? 6. So it says, and the priest will look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague is somewhat dark, the plague has not spread in the skin, and the priest will pronounce him pure. It is a scab, and he will wash his clothes, and he will be pure. Yeah. So what does he got to do to be pure? After
Wash his clothes.
Wash his clothes.
Wash and be clean.
Wash clothes, and what else? Wait till what?
7 days, wouldn't it?
No, after the 7 days, after the priest says that, hey, you're pure, he tells him, wash your clothes and
Be pure.
that's it, right? You're gonna wait till evening, right? And you will be pure. So wash your clothes and you will be pure. But if the scab spreads much abroad in the skin after he has been seen by the priest for his purity, or his purification, he will be seen by the priest again. And if the priest sees that, behold, the scab spreads in the skin, then the priest will pronounce him impure. It is leprosy. So if it comes back, if he has a relapse, then again he's going to be impure again. Okay? Why would it come back? Interesting. What kind of a skin disease is this?
Fungus.
Right?
They
So-
said it was a mark.
It's a mark, yeah. It's sahara. And I think there's another word in here. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was... there was another word. I'll find it later. I think it's like nega, maybe? I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, sorry. Verse 9. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, he will be brought to the priest, and the priest will see him, and behold, if the rising is white in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and there's a quick raw flesh in the rising, well, it's an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest will pronounce him impure, and he will shut him up, for he is impure. And if the leprosy breaks out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy covers all his skin that has the plague from his head even to his foot, wherever the priest looks, the priest will consider, and behold, if the leprosy has covered all of his flesh, he will pronounce him pure that has the plague. It is all turned white. He is pure. So he says, when the raw flesh appears in him, he will be impure.
So as long as it's just all white, but there's no raw flesh, even though it's his whole body that's white, he's clean. But if there's raw flesh appearing, boom, then he's unclean.
So if this was an infectious disease that he's talking about, you would assume that someone who's covered from head to toe, you want to stay away from them. But in this case, no. But here's where I think we have to be intuitive on this whole thing. What if John, or I won't pick on you. What if I had a mark on my side?
And it's covered.
And it's covered.
You wouldn't know.
Who's gonna know? Remember that priest that has to wear his underwear when he goes into the tabernacle? Who's gonna know? Can't he just go in? Because no one's gonna know. Or is someone gonna know?
Integrity.
God's gonna know, right? But for me, this is what we like to do in life. This is what Adam and Eve did in the first pages of your Bible. When they messed up, where were they found? Hiding. So this is interesting because what if I have this scab, this rising coming in me? I'm embarrassed. I'm pretty self-conscious. I don't want anyone to know what's going on with me. You know? Sometimes I'm afraid to ask for prayer because I don't want you to know that there's something wrong with me. but yet I've got to tell someone, like, no, you know what? I'm not going to tell anyone. No one can see it. I'm just going to hide this. My opinion, and this is just my speculation, is that maybe the person that's just covered in this thing is someone who tried to hide it. Maybe it's someone who tried to hide it, and so yet now they're covered, and they can't hide it no more. You guys ever try to hide something in your life? Whether it was something bad or just something from your parents or from your wife or your husband? You ever just try to hide something? You guys know what I'm saying? You got, over 6 million people living in Israel. Do you think all 6 million people are going to confess everything they're doing? But yeah, so that's my speculation here, is that in order for me to let the priest know, the only way the priest is going to know that if I have a mark on my body, if it's not, like on my hands or something, like if it's right here, I could wear a long sleeve and who's going to know? I'm wearing pants, who's going to know? The only way, in my opinion, that a priest is going to know is like if it's like right on my face, and if it's not, if it's somewhere else, I have to go and confess that. Because with me not confessing that, now I'm spreading my impurity to all of you unbeknownst to you. Like you don't know. And is that loving my neighbor? No, it's not. So you see what God is really trying to pull out. I know when you just read the pages of it at first glance, it sounds kind of weird and odd and strange about this, try to read this at dinner time. It's not the coolest thing, reading about pus and scabs and, and fleshy skin.
Raw flesh.
Yeah, raw
We
flesh.
ate first, right?
Yes, Hannah.
Your wife will probably kick you.
No, I've done it a few times over the years where I was reading this and she's like, right now, ew. It's like, sorry. So, but yeah, what I'm saying is you have to actually confess this to people. You're the one that has to come out and go and confess this. Sadly, I don't see a lot of people doing this. Out of 6 million, I'm pretty sure there's a handful, maybe not more, that are not doing this. And so
they should have multiple priests that they can go to.
Oh,
right?
they have a lot of priests. There's
the
thousands.
order.
There's thousands
Yeah.
of priests, right, that run this temple or this tabernacle.
'Cause it's always been meant to be broken down into smaller groups anyways. Because who wants to confess in front of 6 million people what they did?
Yeah, so you're going to the priest. Hopefully you're just going to the priest and doing this. But, so my speculation with this man that gets covered completely and has nothing to do with infectious disease, because or else who would want to be around him? But the priest goes and he says, well, he's pure. Maybe because now there's nothing left for him to hide. That's my opinion. I'm pretty sure there's other things out there, but that's my opinion, is this. If you're going to conceal it, well, then God's going to bring everything that you're doing in the darkness, he's going to bring it to light. If you didn't want to confess it, God will expose it for you. And he doesn't do it to shame you. He does it because he loves you. And he's trying to release you from those prison doors.
Truth will set you free.
And the truth will set you free, right? It will. Even, it hurts sometimes. It hurts when you got to tell somebody sometimes, But it'll set you free. And the moment you experience that freedom, hopefully you enjoy that freedom and you love that freedom and you want to stay in that freedom for the rest of your life and never go back to your times of shame and hiding stuff and guilt, right? We cool? Yep. Okay, let's keep reading. John, 15. You're the man. You are the man. And the priest will see the raw flesh and pronounce him to be impure, for the raw flesh is impure, it's leprosy. Or if the raw flesh turns again and is changed to white, he will come to the priest. And the priest will see him, and behold, if the plague is turned to white, then the priest will pronounce him pure that has the plague, for he is pure. Okay, so the flesh also in which there was a boil, even in its skin, and is healed, and in the place of the boil there is a white rising or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and is shown to the priest. If when the priest sees it, behold, it's in the sight lower than the skin, and the hair of it has turned white, the priest will pronounce him impure. It's the plague of leprosy, broken out of the boil. But if the priest looks at it, and behold, there are no white hairs in it, and it is not lower than the skin, but is somewhat dark, then the priest will shut him up for 7 days. And if it spreads much abroad in his skin, then the priest will pronounce him impure. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stays in its place and does not spread, it is a burning boil, and the priest will pronounce him pure. Have you guys ever heard of the Day of Atonement?
Yep. It doesn't mean atonement, it is covering.
Right, so covering,
You always get
right?
hungry for that. Like, who talks about atonement?
Covering, so covering. So Day of Atonement, Day of Covering. And that's coming up in a Torah portion, in about 2 more Torah portions. It should be here. Why would you need someone to go in to cleanse your sins for you when you already had the first sin offerings in the first pages of Leviticus, and it says you were forgiven?
Already hidden. Potentially hidden.
Because they're potentially out of 6 million people, not everyone's confessing their sin and going up with their offerings. So Day of Atonement once a year was to cover all those offerings or all those sins that weren't being confessed, so that there would be no sin in the land. Right? Because even God knows that not everybody here is going to confess what they're doing. Lots of secret stuff going on. So Day of Atonement is to do that. And I believe that's the same type of thing with this marking, is that some people are trying to conceal what they're doing, and so God's putting a mark on them the way that he put a mark on Cain, saying, I'm dealing with them right now. And so when the priest sees it, and he sees that, okay, it is this mark, this zaharat, they're going to go for 7 days and have some introspect on themselves, examine their life, hopefully repent of what they found that they're doing wrong, and they come out and they're cleansed or they're pure. Or if they don't and they're doubling down, then they continue to go back in another 7 days. And if they never come to that place of turning, then maybe they're the ones that are like just out in the camp for like a very long time, if not forever. But yeah, so I think in my mind, what I'm trying to wrestle with here is that there are people who don't confess some of the things that they're doing, that they're trying to hide them and conceal them. And I think God is dealing with them, and this is how he deals with them, in this way. My opinion. John, you raising your hand? Oh.
I was raising my hand, but sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, so let's keep reading.
Well, I still think that it's just so interesting to go back to, I think you said it the other day, about how like God covered Adam and Eve with those skins.
Right.
You know? I still like can't get that out of my mind. The covering, you know, it keeps coming back, you know. So there's obviously like a covers the sins, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Because he knows who he chose is not perfect. He knows that we're not perfect. Because if we were perfect, he wouldn't have to give us all these instructions to love each other. You know, not to want to steal each other's stuff and each other's wives and children and slaves or whatever. So yeah. So, verse 24. If there is any flesh in the skin of which there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burns has a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, then the priest will look at it, and behold, the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and it is in sight deeper than the skin. It is leprosy, broken out of the burning. Then the priest will pronounce him impure.